can. Spins a web any size. Catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
Hello and welcome to Amazing Spider-Man Classics, your one-stop shop for everything 1960s Spider-Man. With me again, I have Mr. Bertone and Mr. Donovan Grant. Thank you guys for being on the show.
Nope.
We are on episode number 2, covering Amazing Spider-Man issues 1 and 2. Since this is actually 5 minutes after the last episode stopped recording, let's dive right into issue number 1 of Amazing Spider-Man. Was released on December 10th, 1962, with a cover date of March 1963. Again, we have Jack Kirby drawing Spider-Man for us, and the Fantastic Four, with Steve Ditko going back and inking all the little webs in. And Artie Simek is the man we have to thank for the Amazing Spider-Man logo that has lasted all these decades. He did the lettering and the logo design on the cover here. So that's really pretty cool. I think he should get more credit for that. This issue has 2 feature-length Spider-Man thrillers. We have Spider-Man in a really awesome... I really like this cover. This is not quite as iconic as Amazing Fantasy 15, but I really like it. He's like, the Fantastic Four think I'm trapped, but they don't suspect my real power. Well, that's corny, but the picture itself is pretty cool.
Sounds like a villain there.
It actually does. It's like the Fantastic Four meet the Spider-Man.
Dun, dun, dun. Which the Fantastic Four were the more popular team at the time.
Yeah, I know,
in fact,
right?
for a long time, they were Marvel's best-selling title. At one point, Spider-Man did surpass the Fantastic Four. And if you read those early Fantastic Four titles, you can see why it was the most popular one, because those are really good stuff.
The Lee and King. I have not yet finished it. We're in the 70s somewhere with my daughter. I love that Fantastic Four run. There are a couple of clunkers, like the first Diablo story and a couple others, like the Hate Monger I didn't really care for. But
Reed and Sue forget that they're engaged, and he proposes to her again.
Yes, that's awesome. They're engaged in the first issue, and then not again until like 30. So this first story is called Spider-Man, which is original, and it's almost like the second half of the origin story, sort of providing a link between the initial 11-page story and the rest of the Spidey adventures to come. It picks up directly from the end of Amazing Fantasy 15, even includes a brief recap for those who missed the other book from 6 months earlier. Peter Parker is still upset about his Uncle Ben dying, and he eavesdrops on his Aunt May to find out that they can't even afford to pay rent. So to make money, he goes back into show business as Spider-Man, with a hyphen this time. Good old Agent Maxie insists on paying him with a check, but damn if the bank won't cash it for him without some sort of spider identification. Then our favorite Hitler impersonator, J. Jonah Jameson, publisher of the Daily Bugle, begins writing and lecturing against Spider-Man, saying that his own son, astronaut John Jameson, is a real hero, and Spider-Man is a dangerous fraud. Somehow this finishes Spider-Man in show business. I'm pretty sure there's no way that one newspaper voice could have that kind of power today, but I guess this was 1962.
Also, it's like Spider-Man's no hero, and he's an outlaw, and he's taken the law into his own hands. Unless we're going by those Amazing Fantasy stories from the 90s, which we'll talk about later.
Which we aren't.
All he's done is web up one criminal, and the cops weren't even sure if it was him, and be a wrestler.
Right. He was on TV. He was a wrestler, and he was a sideshow freak on TV.
He webbed a candle, Jameson. What if children try and web candles, huh?
So maybe Jameson was the Walter Cronkite of the Marvel Universe, and like everyone listened to everything he said.
No, he's the Bill O'Reilly.
So now Peter has to get a new job, which sucks, and it proves problematic because he can't do nothing except cool sciencey high school stuff. The next day, John Jameson is launched into space, where he becomes the Man-Wolf and terrorizes his family, and... well,
where he brings back the alien symbiote. Oh, wait, no.
No, that's all later.
Which actually wasn't even in the 616 universe.
So the Jameson capsule separates from the rocket, but component 24-3B of the forward guidance package breaks loose. This is bad, because now Jameson can't control his capsule without his little package. The mission control tries to rescue the capsule, but that doesn't work. And Peter Parker had nothing better to do that day, so he's been watching all these shenanigans go down. So he decides to put on his TV circus suit and help out. Spider-Man volunteers to install a spare 24-3B unit that Mission Control has on hand just in case. Spider-Man hitches a ride with a jet pilot, shoots a web line at the passing capsule, and pulls himself to the nose cone, where he installs the unit, saving John Jameson. Only it's a lot more dramatic than that. There's like a cliffhanger between part 2 and 3 where he's on the capsule, but can he attach the missing unit in time? And later, thinking that even Jonah Jameson would now hire him, Peter is shocked to learn the publisher has demanded his arrest and prosecution, claiming Spider-Man sabotaged the mission because Jameson sucks. And eventually, even the FBI decides to listen to him and issues a reward for Spider-Man's capture, and the public comes to believe that he is a criminal, leaving Peter to wonder what he can possibly do. And I have to say that if I were poor high school boy Peter Parker, who tried to save the astronaut dude and found his name in the paper wanted by the FBI, I would be more than a little freaked out and probably more than a little pissed.
More than a little bit.
It's funny how you mentioned that this kind of picks up right after Amazing Fantasy 15, because it really does. But the problem is they tried to do this thing in the 90s where they did publish like 16, 17, and I think 18 of Amazing Fantasy. And it's kind of hard to fit it in there, and they tried to do more things of Spider-Man in show business, and they did have him fight some crooks, which kind of works with what Jonah's saying about him being an outlaw. They actually have him meet Jonah Jameson for the first time, and Jonah thinks that Spider-Man is like stuck up and too good for the human race, so that's kind of where his hatred comes from in those things. But it doesn't really fit, and John Byrne even said when he did Chapter 1, like, no, that stuff didn't happen, I'm forgetting about it. And if you read the beginning of this issue, it's kind of hard to fit it, because then, it's like, okay, if it's been weeks or months later, why is he all of a sudden going home and throwing his shirt against the wall saying, Uncle Ben is dead, and it's all my fault? And speaking of it all being his fault, he kind of glosses over that. He's like, I was too busy showing off, and then a burglar shot my Uncle Ben. It's a good thing I caught that burglar. If you didn't read Amazing Fantasy 15, you would not know that the burglar was the same burglar that he let get away, or that he even let a burglar get away.
It was kind of the whole point of Amazing Fantasy 15, is that he let the burglar get away who shot his uncle. Yeah. Not that he was showing off and being on television while his uncle was getting shot, but that he let the guy go.
And if this is the morning after Uncle Ben died, holy heck, that is the worst landlord in the world. Hey, I know your husband died last night, got murdered right in front of your eyes, but
where's my money, honey?
Exactly.
Rent!
I want my rent. How are we gonna pay?
It's Mr. Dickovich. This big Italian fat lint, stereotypical lint, which is funny because most other books seem to indicate that Aunt May owns the house. Maybe they wind up buying it, or maybe I don't know, something happens behind the scenes with inheritance.
That's the thing I want. If this their house, why do they owe a rent? But I don't own the house.
And if this is right after Uncle Ben died, that landlord's a jerk, or maybe he didn't know and he felt bad later. He's like, oh my, that poor woman's husband died. I'm a jerk. So then he went home and he threw himself off of a bridge, and then he left in his will, or he felt so bad about it that he gave Aunt May the house to keep, and that's why she owns it.
Actually, what you didn't know is that Uncle Ben always welched on his bills, and he was already 2 weeks behind on the rent when he dies. So he gives Aunt May not just the stack of bills, but the stack of late bills.
He needed to disappear for a while. This whole burglar thing was a setup. He's not dead. He and the burglar set this whole thing up. He was supposed to rescue the burglar from the warehouse, but he took off. He's in Bermuda.
Exactly, and then he comes back in 2002.
There's no Flash Thompson with the classmates in the story.
Yeah, there's not. There's a Liz, but there's a bunch of random people.
Who we assume is Liz, a blonde classmate who's drawn like Liz, who hasn't been named yet.
There's a boy with an O sweater, so there's a lot of letters.
Maybe that's Seymour O'Reilly.
Really?
That's what Midtown High kids do. It's like Flash Thompson came in. He's like, oh, cool, I'm going to wear a shirt with my last name on it. And then I was like, oh, my God, Seymour, you're such a dork. But Flash does it. No,
I know that you worship the ground Flash walks on, but...
Okay, now I love how he says there's only one person to save John Jameson. Really? So not the Human Torch who can fly, or, Ant-Man, and any of them? Nobody?
Yeah,
really? Well, I guess
superheroes tend to get absorbed in their own little world. I'm the superhero of my book, so I'm the only one who can do this.
Yeah, that's why I like when Spider-Man's like, you know what? I'm going to go out of town. The Fantastic Four can handle this, which is kind of what he did when he proposed to Mary Jane for the second time. Spoiler alert, she says no.
No, I was gonna say, I found it interesting that this whole issue it's kind of sensationalistic. You have them in the air solving a NASA crisis, where I think pretty much all the Spider-Man adventures after that are a little more low key. You don't see him kind of doing this.
He's fighting aliens in the next issue, Donovan.
They're not aliens though.
Besides
that, at the time they were. He's fighting aliens. You can't get more high key than.
I don't know. I think it's like, like from going from something a burglar to flying on top of us. I know it was like 60s Marvel. They didn't care, but it's really kind of interesting. Like, he's still like 15 years old, so he could have like easily slipped off and died.
So I like Jameson's lecture in on page 5. Like he has this whole slideshow thing going on, and he has actually gone through the trouble to make art of Spider-Man towering Godzilla style over the skyscrapers of New York City.
It's PowerPoint, man. It's your friend.
James is not he's not as comical until Peter starts working for him. He's just kind of like a jerk, just yelling at him.
He is a bit of a jerk. He actually is a
More-
little more
more-
understandable and relatable and less psychotic about it in this first couple issues.
He's less buffoonish. He's less played. He's just more of an antagonist than like a character we learn to know and love.
While this is the first appearance of Jameson, this is not the first appearance of the Daily Bugle. The Daily Bugle did appear in along with I think the Daily Globe in Fantastic Four issue number 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, this is the first appearance of both Jamesons, J. Jonah and his son John. Although J. Jonah's first name is John too.
Well, there's another J. Jonah Jameson, but we meet him years later.
Yeah, like
so does Aunt May.
Yeah.
Boy,
did they.
Now she knows him.
Oh yeah, we were telling my sister about that scene, me and Donovan, and she's like, "What? How did that get past the planning room floor? Who approved?" John Jameson, first person that in publishing history, I know that they do all these retcons and Untold Tales, but first person that we ever see Spider-Man save.
Oh yeah.
True.
Yeah. He doesn't get the word in edgewise. Because usually he's always kind of protective, or he kind of defends Spider-Man. This one he just is the victim.
Yeah, he does. He is a big defender of during the George Stacy days. John Jameson's a big proponent of Spider-Man.
Until he gets hopped up on magic mushrooms
and ruby neck pieces.
Yeah, and marries She-Hulk.
There's that.
There's a lot of crap that happens in the future.
Oh, John Jameson, the journey that you will go on.
He's just like all these different places.
No, I thought that there was really this is so much like a continuing companion to AF-15 because it really by the end it really hits you home how messed up Peter's life is. Like this time he tried to do the right thing, he did do the right thing, but everybody he's worse off than he started by the end of AF-15 because everybody is out for him. Even his Aunt May says he's horrible, and he's just left wondering what is he going to do. I thought that was really well done.
Like what could he possibly do? Because this whole FBI thing is left behind as soon as it's printed. They forget about it.
Spider-Man, murderer, criminal, douchebag, wanted by the FBI.
But yeah. The whole look of worry on Peter's face at the bottom of that last page of the first story is, you totally get it. It's like, what can he possibly do right? And this occurred to me. I forget what I was reading, but it just dawned on my head that as fans, as comic book readers, as moviegoers, we all like Spider-Man. Spider-Man's cool. But if you lived in the Marvel Universe, Spider-Man is the last superhero you would ever want to swing into your window to save you. He is the freakiest, scariest, most suspicious guy on the planet.
Yeah, and he's allegedly done all this stuff, and I think that the reason why everyone believes Jonah Jameson too is that you got to, at this point, mass media and newspapers, if the newspapers were against you, there really wasn't that many voices in your favor. It was a lot easier to influence people through the media than it is now.
Right. Oh yeah, that's true, because the TV news, being such a young medium at the time, was really, really influential in people's thinking.
Yeah. Extra, John Jameson, son of the publisher of the Daily Bugle, about to orbit Earth. Extra. It's all his fault. Because of him, I can't perform in public as the Spider-Man. But I can't give up. I've got to earn more money somehow. I can't let Aunt May down, even if it means Spider-Man will again stalk the city by night. As he's pounding the brick wall. Now, keep in mind, these are not thought balloons. He's saying this out loud while he's pounding on a brick wall, and he's right next to the newspaper vendor.
Yeah, the news guy's looking at him.
Dude.
What? Dude? Why aren't your hands bleeding?
Yeah.
I could have thought that he knocked the wall down. What do you mean
Spider-Man will stalk the city again by night? Are you trying to get attention by saying that you're Spider-Man? This guy's trying to get attention.
Look at the sweater vest. He's trying
to. And Aunt May with her little flower hat. She's she looks really happy to be getting rid of that jewelry, by the way. Peter's like, oh no, Aunt May loves that jewelry. She's getting rid of it.
She's sharing the money that she's happy about.
She's just got this big smile on her face. She's like, haha, Peter doesn't know I pawned his microscope.
Yeah, it was a jewelry at the time. I thought that Peter knocked the wall over when he was slamming on it. But
you would think, right? If he had
Yeah, if he was really upset, he would easily like just like bowl over it. But
As somebody who has hit brick walls while they're upset, you have to either restrain yourself because you're going to hurt your hand, or in Peter's case, restrain yourself because you're going to hurt the wall. But you can't just hit a brick wall full throttle no matter who you are.
And you can't
Yes.
say,
Either or.
I can't become Spider-Man now in public, in the middle of the street. He's not in. I mean, in these early issues, he talks out loud a lot. He does it all over Amazing Fantasy 15 to the point where he narrates his every move. Like, I just crushed that pipe. I'm narrating my every move. I'm losing my grip.
So I'm pretty sure that Jonah Jameson has the kind of personality where he was like a child abuser, a father. So like he's walking his kid out to the platform. He's like, "This is it, John. Make your country proud of you, son. As proud as I, your father, am today. I'll do my best, Dad. I promise."
And like when the capsule like broke, he's like, "Oh no, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it for this." Dad, it was Spider-Man's fault. He sabotaged it. Please don't hit me with the Sunday Bugle edition. Child abuse is not funny. It's a very serious thing, people.
No. Yes.
It's only funny when it's happening to Man Wolf, aka Captain Jupiter or Colonel Jupiter or whatever.
AKA John.
Is that the name he takes at some point? Colonel Jupiter?
Yeah, the cartoon he did.
I didn't see that. I know he was Man Wolf and Star God. Is that what they call him?
Oh God, that was so stupid. When like Man Wolf kind of had his own feature and a title for a while.
Right, Creatures on the Loose.
Yeah, and like he was intelligent and he could talk and
then it got canceled before they could actually do the Star God thing. But they liked the Star God idea so well that 3 or 4 years later they did a 2-parter in Marvel Premiere or something where they finally got to do the Star God.
Oh, John Jameson, the journey that you will go on. You have no idea what's in store for you. You're going to become a wolf, marry a giant green woman, and...
I'm all about marrying the giant green woman, though. Orion Slave Girl? Yeah.
So that whole thing about even Mr. Jameson would hire me now. Yeah, because that's kind of funny. The idea of J. Jonah Jameson ever hiring Peter Parker, that's a laugh.
That's a laugh. That's never going to happen.
Not even in the next issue.
Not 2 months later, no.
If you were in this situation, you would think the same thing. So I think the next panel is like, it is a kind of surprise, once it came out. The papers demand that he's arrested and prosecuted. You're like, what? Seriously?
Oh, come on.
It isn't possible. Why? Okay, do we have anything else on this first story? We've made fun of it pretty much from every angle.
Well, the fact when the classmates invite him to go see the Spider-Man show, he was kind of like, "Oh, I got something to do." It's funny because Flash Thompson later talks about to Peter years later that the reason why everyone picked on Peter so much is that they felt that he kind of always acted standoffish, like he was too good for him.
They play that up in the college days. I didn't know they retconned it for the high school days, but they did play that up in the remedial.
That's explicit in the college days.
Yeah, it was explicit in the college days, but in the high school, Flash later reveals it, and that, he even feels that, Liz was throwing herself at Peter, and Peter was being rude to her, which,
kind of was true.
That makes sense for the later issues when Liz actually liked Peter, but, that'll come later.
As much as I like Spider-Man, I like reading it, I like the adventures, I like Peter. Peter is very often a not nice guy.
Well, I think he's a very inadvertently not a nice guy.
It's like he doesn't have the social skills.
Yeah, he's so focused on Aunt May or whatever's going on, and which is what happened in the college days. And it's funny because he kind of finished college the same way he started, early in the college days. Aunt May was in the hospital, and so he was worried about her, and he blew everyone off, and they all thought he was a jerk. And around the time when he was graduating college, it was the same thing. Aunt May was in the hospital, and Harry Osborn and everyone else were like, "Peter, you missed your..." Well, no, you know what? Because that was when Aunt May was in the nursing home. She supposedly died the next issue. So, but he missed his graduation party because he was tied to Jameson on the bomb.
I remember that.
Yeah. He didn't graduate.
Yeah, well, that was when he graduated, when they mailed him his diploma.
Okay, so then we have Spider-Man versus the Chameleon. I have to say that's an awesome splash page.
Yeah, with the Fantastic Four just looking up their statues. Oh.
That's really, I don't like the Fantastic Four there, but the whole Chameleon towering over New York and Spider-Man, who now has much larger lenses, I notice, compared to what we were just looking at.
They're close away, yeah.
This is Spidey's first honest-to-goodness supervillain fight, although the Chameleon doesn't really have superpowers. At least this version of him doesn't seem to have any superpowers. He actually turns into a shapeshifter later, doesn't he?
Yeah.
In the cartoon, he had the bells.
They recently brought him back to basics. in Amazing Spider-Man and a Fred Van Linte story.
So we start with Peter Palmer. Yes, Palmer.
I've heard it says Parker. Then
Yeah, your version's been edited. It's Peter Palmer throughout this second story.
Yeah.
With like
And
Bob
if
Banner.
a fan wrote in, like in one of the future issues, like, I'm confused. Is it Peter Parker or Peter Palmer?
Yeah. And Peter gets the awesomest idea for a job. He decides to join the Fantastic Four. Because it's genius, but he can't get into their penthouse offices the normal way, so he decides to make a great first impression by breaking into the Baxter Building.
Oh, yes.
And of course, the Fantastic Four don't like this, and he ends up fighting all four of them one at a time to prove his worth, only to be told by the FF that they are a non-profit organization that offers no salaries. So all that for nothing. And when one of them makes a crack about being wanted by the police, Spidey makes a sad, quick exit. Meanwhile, across town, the Chameleon, who is not only a master of disguise, but also a spy, dun dun dun.
And comedy.
The Chameleon impersonates, a commie spy.
Does it say buddy in your version, by the way?
Buddy?
In some of the reprints, when Spider-Man says, end of the line, commie, they change it to end of the line, buddy.
Yes. Do you have buddy or commie?
I have comedy.
Okay.
Some versions say buddy, like Marvel Tales, and which makes the whole story fall apart, because it's like, why is he stealing country secrets?
Exactly. Like, if you don't pay attention to the little hammer and sickle on the submarine, then you have no clue what's going on.
That may be edited out too, I'm not sure, but it was all about communists. If you read the early Fantastic Four issues too, they're like, we have to get to the moon before the Reds do.
And Thor was a defender of democracy. Yeah. The Chameleon impersonates Professor Newton, a defense scientist, and steals some plans for his friends on the other side of the Iron Curtain. Hearing of Spider-Man's FF visit, he deduces the web-slinger is desperate for money. This is not a leap in logic at all, but we'll let it slide for now. And so Chameleon sets Spider-Man up by broadcasting a message attuned to Peter's spider sense, which we've also never heard about. He offers a profitable venture over his little message, but then he steals missile...
Spider sense was mentioned a few pages earlier in the Fantastic Four fight.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry.
When he's fighting the Invisible Girl.
Oh.
That was the first mention of it too.
But then the Chameleon steals missile plans disguised as Spider-Man because he's a jerk, and the wall crawler arrives at a rendezvous just as the Chameleon escapes, leaving Spider-Man to take the fall for the robbery. Escaping, Spider-Man tracks down the Chameleon, prevents the sale of the special missile plans, and turns him over to the police for being a dirty spy. Now, this would be a great ending, except we still have 2 more pages. So the Chameleon breaks free, disguises himself as a police officer, and convinces the other police that Spidey is the Chameleon. So Spider-Man runs away, but in the process he unknowingly rips the Chameleon's police uniform, revealing his Spider-Man outfit underneath. The police take the Chameleon away, but a poor, sobbing Spidey is unaware of his victory.
AKA he runs off crying.
He does run off crying.
Which is hilarious, because you don't see lots of stories where a superhero runs.
That is pretty cool. This is the first appearance for the...
in my blog.
This is the first appearance of the Chameleon, but we don't get a name or origin for him here, and I don't think we actually get either of those until the 1990s sometime. So
It's Dmitry Smirtikov.
he's actually Craven's brother, right?
Yeah, half brother.
We don't know about that though until after Craven dies, right?
Yeah.
Craven died? Wait, who's Craven?
Who's Craven? What the?
This is 1963. Or actually, no, we're still in 1962. It's just in 1963 publishing it, right?
Right. Yeah, we're still in October, I think.
Yeah. I can't wait till the Beatles come next year. That's going to be awesome.
Right.
I should remember that we're in the non-segregated part where we can talk to each other.
Yeah, this is actually.
Oh.
Oh, why?
Yeah, but yeah, we find out he was Craven's brother in the Luke Ross, John Mark DeMatteis run of Spectacular Spider-Man post-Clone Saga.
Okay. Yeah, there's so much of that I haven't read, that I've read about, so I'm not sure exactly when it all happens.
We knew that the Chameleon and Craven were friends prior to that, and that they were like childhood friends, but the extent of it was discovered.
Did we even know childhood friends? Because I haven't read that yet.
Well, yeah, that's like kind of revealed, and that's one of the reasons, like stuff was going on in Craven's house with Chameleon after he did the Peter Parker parents thing. And you know that they were old friends when they first meet, but Chameleon doesn't actually know that he's Craven's brother until that issue of Spectacular. Like, he realizes it for the first time.
Oh, okay, so we learn it with him.
It's actually funny because later on, Paul Jenkins did a story in Web Spinners where he's on the Brooklyn Bridge with Peter, and
Oh,
they're
I
kind
love
of
that. I love that story.
yeah, and where he tells Peter that he loves him, and then he commits suicide, but he doesn't actually commit suicide, but he kind of does, whatever. He remembers their first encounter, and he's like, I remember it. You tore from my helicopter, and you called me a commie. You called me a commie. Why would you call me a commie? Which I love how they did that.
So the first panel here, I didn't realize this till just now. The reason he gets the idea of joining the Fantastic Four is because he's reading a stupid Fantastic Four comic book.
I always got the impression that it was like a magazine or something, like a People magazine or whatever.
Well, in the Fantastic Four comic, they talk about the fact they make comics about him.
Yeah,
So I'm guessing he's reading a Fantastic Four comic.
that wouldn't be See, it looks really big to be a comic. Like it's bigger than his chest.
It's like a giant size or something.
Maybe it's one of those Marvel Treasury editions. That I have. A
Well,
few
you know,
of those.
Silver Age comics were bigger than modern day comics, right?
Yeah.
I think that John Duffy, who's like, it's like on the early days he gave about Sam Rosen, Art Simic, and like those are the classic letterers. John Duffy kind of makes this. I know it's kind of weird talking about lettering in a comic book because it's the least interesting, but these letters are so kind of like matter of fact, they kind of just typeface. It's not as interesting as when you get to like the Rosen issues where they're more bombastic.
John Duffy also likes his non-standard caption boxes. Like these are all squiggly bordered here, and then in Amazing Spider-Man 3, they're all sorts of funky shapes. They're not just rectangles.
So how does Ben Grimm, first of all, who says you must got rock for brains? It's like, dude, if anyone has rock for brains, it's you. You're made of frickin' rock. But I digress. He's like, he's a cornball teenager like the Torch. Which is one of the things in these early issues. Like, everyone seems to know that Spider-Man's a teenager. It's probably because he's always, like, running away and crying like a little girl and throwing tantrums, but...
It's entirely possible that was part of his shtick on the Maxie Schiffman show. That he was, the teenage Wonder Boy with the spider powers. That's possible. That may have been what it was.
I disagree with that only because there's so many stories where Spider-Man's like, oh, if they only knew I was, so-and-so age. And, like, there's so many stories, like, where if he imagines Jonah Jameson, like, knowing his identity, says, well, but it is Spider-Man. He actually turns out to be a teenager, so...
Oh, yeah, that was, like, one of the big things is whenever he unmasks after Civil War and Doc Octopus comes after him and either Sensational or Friendly, I forget which one, he's like...
Friendly.
And he was a kid! You beat me and you were a kid!
Oh, no, it was Sensational. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Which is funny because he unmasks him. Spoiler alert.
Right, but that was supposed to be a whole, blown off thing. Like that wasn't the real Spider-Man. But yeah, it adds extra irony to the situation later.
Yeah, because irony has never been a big part of Spider-Man, and they never hit you over the head with irony, which they still do now. But yeah, it's ha ha ha, get it guys, I'm making money by taking pictures of myself, but wait a minute, here's the catch. I'm selling them to a guy that hates me, but wait, there's more. The pictures that I'm selling to this guy are being used to defraud me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all. So
wait a minute. Flash Thompson is Spider-Man's biggest fan? but he hates Peter Parker? What? This is ridiculous. That's not how things work.
And I don't know if this counts, but the Fantastic Four are Marvel's lead title, and Spider-Man takes them out in about a page.
Because that's how he rolls.
That's how he rolls.
The four guys,
like he knocks them out.
Don't you think?
Say again?
Just a little bit. Like I know that they have a good point, but they kind of seem like a little dickation or a little jerkish in this issue, just attacking him and beating him up. When he didn't attack him first. He broke in, but like. He said he wanted to talk to him. They kind of just like the thing hauls up and punches him.
Yeah, the thing sort of starts it all off, but then it sort of escalates from there. I mean, the glass cage falls. He opens it up, and Reed Richards starts to stress that he's going to break it. So Thing decides to lean on him a little bit too much, and he throws the thing into the torch. So Reed has to calm him down. It just escalates, and it's all kind of. It's your classic misunderstanding battle where...
It's a classic Marvel fight.
It's the first mention of his spider sense, too, which is called his spider instinct. They never really explain how his spider sense works. The best example that was given in these early days is that they compare it to, like, how a spider is aware of everything that goes on its web, like by feeling the vibrations that. But like it's later on in the story, he's like, I'm gonna tune my spider sense to find the helicopter.
Well,
Like,
I read that, and I can buy that just because he, like, it showed when he concentrates, he can, like, sense things.
yeah.
What I didn't buy was Chameleon being able to tune in into it.
Which
Yeah,
Doctor Who
once you
doesn't
turn his
do.
spider sense into a radio frequency transceiver, then I have issues.
Well, he tunes his spider sense and his spider sense, the way it works varies from issue to issue, including, and it's always contradicted and like to the point
You'll get
where,
a new writer, and he'll have his own rules on how the spider sense works.
like he knew that Mary Jane was behind his door in his apartment because of his spider sense in issue 149, but then like the previous issue, Professor Warren said that his spider sense didn't detect him because he was pretending to be his friend.
Right.
There was the Game War story where he was killed hostage by Hammerhead, and he could use his spider sense to tell who was on the other side of the phone.
So
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing about spider sense. I never want it to be explained. I like it being ambiguous and different from issue to issue.
it's midichlorians, dude.
Oh, and there's Star Wars reference number. Well,
So
but
you guys have read early Fantasy 4. What do you think about Steve Ditko drawing the 4? Does it work for you, or does it mesh well, or does it
I don't
not?
really mind it so much. I do think that whenever they redo this story in Fantastic Four Annual, that the Thing definitely looks better.
well, this is how the Thing looked in early issues of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
You'll
more
notice
soft.
that his rocky form kind of,
Right.
blocks out
Di-
over time.
I think Kirby had already started to modify it, and Ditko was using an older version or something like that. In any
Yeah.
case, fans reacted very strongly against Ditko's rendition of the Fantastic Four here. So they did a revamp of this story later on. What's up with the Chameleon's face? Is this his face, or is he wearing a mask over a mask?
He's wearing a mask
This is-
over a mask.
We never ever see his real face, or I don't think we have.
But we do know that this mannequin look that he has going on is actually a mask over his face.
Yeah, it's a mask.
That's not his real face.
Well, you
Dude.
never know. I mean, the Chameleon, for being his number one issue villain, is not used very much. And I haven't read that many there aren't that many stories of him in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
For a while, the Chameleon was appearing in Hull. I think after the Craven story, the Chameleon didn't appear till like somewhere in the 70s or 80s of Spider-Man. I could be wrong here. He wasn't in the Sinister Six.
Right.
Someone will
sure?
have to pull up someone's gonna have to pull up a Chameleon appearance list. But I'm pretty sure that it was like after
He appeared in the '80s issues because he did the whole George Stacy storyline, but that was one issue. And I
Yeah.
don't think
And he shows up once again, like
well, that's what I
Spider-Man.
meant when I said 70s and 80s issues. That I meant like
Yeah.
issue 70s and 80s, not like the decade 70s and 80s.
And then I don't think he's again until like the 180s, whenever there's an issue where Spider-Man gets cleared of all charges, and the Chameleon shows up for one issue to give him some crap.
At
And
that
that's when he
point, he
actually
had
has
the
like
fur.
shape-shifting powers
yeah,
and a really terrible multicolored costume.
the Chameleon and his amazing Technicolor code.
Yeah, exactly. What else we got? We have Chameleon using a spider web gun,
let's ignore that.
which is awesome.
But I guess Spider-Man hasn't been around long enough, so nobody notices
Right.
that. Hey, that's not web shooters. Although maybe Peter Parker isn't so brilliant after all. If even the Chameleon can develop a web gun.
That's something I always remember, like from Ultimate Spider-Man, where the guy who was impersonating him from Volume 5, like there's no explanation. He just knows how to make a web shooter because it was like,
Yeah,
I don't know,
you would
science.
expect them to explain where he got the stupid web shooter, but they don't.
yeah. For some reason, I didn't mind that because it was more realistic that it was that anybody could make it than just Spider-Man in that version. So
At least in that universe, webs are not hard to make.
I hear you, Josh.
Yeah, I know. That's the it's magic.
I like how
Well,
Spider-Man.
I just went. It's science. Like Reed says on page whatever. He says we pay no salary for bonuses. Any profit we make goes into scientific research for science.
For
That's
science.
the motto of these early
Yeah,
issues.
like that $1,000 tube that he complained about Spider-Man breaking.
Well, he
All
has
right.
to make a stupid new invention every single story. So
Second-
that's what,
Science.
Second to last page of the issue, last panel, we have something happening for the first time.
out of web fluid.
Yeah,
Oh yes.
first time out of web
And
fluid.
he doesn't. And we'll get to the next issue, but he doesn't even refill until he forgets to refill.
And he does his first web parachute and his first web slingshot, too. They're actually kind of getting creative here. I kind of like this.
I just love, and I love how the Fantastic Four maybe he's gonna grow up and become a villain.
Which is totally
Yeah,
what we're
why not?
saying. Like, he totally could.
That was I wanted to mention from the first issue is that you see him, like, you see a panel of him in the speedboat, and then the first issue you see like he had a guy help him in a jet, but you don't actually see it. It's just kind of narrated. So I was wondering if that's the thing that Ditko randomly put in there, and Stanley had to go, oh crap, how do I explain away this, or that was in the script. It is kind of funny. It's just kind of randomly see him get on these vehicles.
Well,
Are you talking about
someone else flew the jet though.
in the John
Yeah.
Jameson story? Yeah, because I
Yeah.
was wondering because he webs the guy, and like that guy can't fly because he's stuck in webs for the next hour. But when the Chameleon is dressed as Spidey and he's running up the stairs, he's carrying his mask vest with him. I thought it was just a nice little continuity touch. Like he has to keep his like sort of like Ultimate Spidey wearing a backpack all the time to keep his clothes with him. He has to carry his stuff even though he's Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's really, I didn't even realize as a kid the whole communist thing because I didn't have that awareness of the world. It's not that blatant. It is said, it's there, you can read it, but it's not rubbed in your face that
that guy says Spider-Man, a traitor? And of course when you're reading that you're thinking, oh yeah, he's a traitor because, he's a hero, but he's a villain. But no, they mean like traitor to the country.
Right. And I actually got the impression that the Chameleon was an American working for the communists until I found out later that he was actually Russian himself.
Yeah, and that's understandable. They don't come to his Russian roots until way later. He's much more of a mystery man in these early days.
The Chameleon?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know nothing about him.
Chameleon.
Oh, I just listened to that issue. I don't know if y'all listen to the Super Future Friends, but they did a episode where they used that as their intro and outro song because the story they were talking about featured Chameleon Boy. The whole FBI thing at the end of the first story, that's when I was saying it was forgotten about as soon as it was printed, because here he is with the police, like walking amongst the police trying to find the Chameleon. They're not cuffing him. They're not trying to apprehend him or keep him hostage or keep him, in custody while they go and find the Chameleon. They just let him walk around. So
well, J. Jonah Jameson has a really big imagination.
maybe he printed that in his paper without actually the FBI actually saying that.
Or maybe like the FBI were like, yeah, we'll get on it. Oh, you hear that? He's wanted. They'll get like they just wanted to shut him up. We'll get on.
They're just trying to get him off the phone, and they tell us
that's most
something
likely
that
what happened, actually. Yeah.
that actually sounds really, really Jameson right there. So yeah, good issue.
Yeah, I like this. I like both the endings where you have Peter really in a bad place, and it's like just continuing that theme of, oh, this sounds great, but when you actually put it in reality, it's not going to turn out so good. So I like it.
Yeah, this guy's gonna have a nervous breakdown.
There is a personal message from Spider-Man between pages here. You probably don't have it, Donovan, where he's inviting kids to write letters, and the picture of Spider-Man there is not great. I'm having a hard time placing my finger on exactly what's wrong with it, but it's really pretty terrible.
Probably not drawn by Ditko.
The Chameleon will later be defeated by both Aunt May and Mary Jane separately.
Yeah.
Really?
Mary Jane will beat him with a baseball bat after he tries to rape her, and Aunt May will feed him not poisonous cookies, but she'll put sleeping pills in his cookies.
Nice.
As you do.
Yeah. So the Chameleon not only gets beaten by Spider-Man later, but like just by various members of his family.
He's two most closest female members of his immediate
It's
family.
funny too, because like when Chameleon, comes home as Peter to Mary Jane, and he's like, "Man, the Chameleon was so hard to defeat, Mary Jane. I mean, he is my toughest foe." So Mary Jane knows. So Mary Jane knows that he's like full of, CARP.
Carp.
I don't. Well,
Fraud.
He's full of fish.
yeah. It's 12:30 in the morning.
No, it's
so.
okay. Okay, well,
And I try not to
let's
curse
barrel
out
on
loud.
to issue number
Let's
2.
move on.
One. Issue 2 was released on February 12th, 1963, with a cover date of May. This is the first cover to have Steve Ditko handling all the art chores, where he will remain, with only one exception, until issue 38. It's also the first cover to sport the Marvel Comics group logo with the Spidey face on the top left corner. The first story is called Duel to the Death with the Vulture. The Vulture is terrorizing New York City. New York City! And Daily Bugle publisher J. Jonah Jameson demands photos for his Now magazine. Learning that Vulture photos will be worth a fortune, Peter Parker asks Aunt May for a camera. She gives him Uncle Ben's. And soon after, the Vulture publicly announces his intent to steal the Park Avenue Jewelry Exchange's diamond transfer. Spider-Man encounters him, but is so busy snapping pictures, he alerts the Vulture, who circles behind, stunning him and dropping him in a water tower. Not a burning silo, because that's going to be used later. Awakened by the cold water, Spider-Man discovers his web shooter's empty and must dive to the bottom and propel himself up to escape, which is actually kind of awesome. It's one of my favorite parts of the story. Back home, Peter develops his photos and whips up an anti-magnetic inverter out of his butt to counter what he suspects is the Vulture's magnetic-produced power. I like how he suspects this is what's causing it, and so he just happens to land upon the exact reason the first try.
As you do.
As you do. He sells the pictures to J. Jonah Jameson under the condition that he never asks how he managed them. With police guarding against an air attack, the Vulture emerges from a manhole to steal the jewelry, escaping through subway tunnels. However, Spider-Man arrives and uses his inverter, grounding the Vulture, and Peter sells the photos to Jameson and pays Aunt May's rent for a year.
Oh, yes.
First appearances, JJ's secretary gets a name later, Eleanor Brant. I don't know if she shows up later, but she gets a name later.
That's never been confirmed that that's Eleanor Brant.
Really?
Betty Brant's mother, yeah. There's some people that have speculated that. She looks more like a receptionist for the building, and not J. Jonah Jameson's personal secretary. And her hair color, it's never been confirmed, to my knowledge, unless, you have a source book or something that, just went ahead and bit the bullet and said, you know what, F it, it's Betty Brant's mother.
Yeah, it says here that her next appearance is Untold Tales number 12, and her full name is revealed in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, Spider-Man from 2007.
What are you reading that from, a website or
the official index to the Marvel Universe.
Well, it's the official index, so they decided that it's Betty Brant's mom. I guess it's Betty Brant's mom. They're the official, because it's been speculated. But the thing is, I don't think not enough time has passed between this and when we see Betty Brant in the Sandman story for Betty to become the secretary. Because if you read the Untold Tales story, it looks like some time had passed between Betty's mom being the secretary and Betty being the secretary. Which it's a really good story, by the way, and it's you see a very human side of Jonah. It's funny. Betty just shows up. I think it's to collect her mom's last paycheck or something, and another secretary has just quit because Jonah's being Jonah. So Betty just sits down and starts doing work all afternoon. And then Jonah, it takes Jonah half the day to realize, wait a second, you're not the girl from the agency. It's no, I'm Miss Brant's daughter. And he's Miss Brant's daughter, then you're practically family. You're gonna get taken care of here, blah blah blah.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's hard to tell how much time has passed. The books are bi-monthly.
Yeah, at this point they are.
And in issue 3, he makes a comment at the beginning about how he's run out of bad guys to fight. And that sort of gives the impression that he's been doing this for a while now, as opposed to just, 3 bad guys he's fought.
By the way, how vain is J. Jonah Jameson, where the Now Magazine building, J. Jonah Jameson's name is bigger than the Now Magazine logo. And who does that? Who puts the name on the building, published?
J. Jonah Jameson.
I could see that.
Speaking of unconfirmed first appearances, do you think the Joe that is mentioned is Joe Robertson?
No,
yeah, that's what I thought.
Joe Robinson doesn't work at the Bugle until much later.
Well, he's made editor later, but was he hired on from the outside, or did he move up?
I was under the impression that he was hired on from the outside.
What were you saying, Don?
Well, I remember when Robertson first appeared, they didn't say he was new. They just said, well, this is the editor. He was it was kind of like Jim Rhodes, he just happens to be here, but we assume that he's been there the whole time.
Peter hadn't known him until that point.
Yeah, Peter and other people. He was being introduced to he was introduced to John Jameson, and I would think that if he was someone that twice actually. That was the Spider Jeopardy question when I was on Crawl Space.
Oh, he met Joe twice, the writer forgot.
Yeah, the writer forgot. I was under the impression for various reasons that Joe was new, and I think that if he would have been working at the Bugle and known Jonah for a while, he wouldn't have been meeting John for the first time. And in fact, when he's meeting Spider-Man and everything, and he's Spider-Man knows my name, it's all he's new to all of this, and he's new to all these people.
On the other hand, if you have a busy newspaper and, dozens of people running around, would you necessarily introduce your son to everyone who worked for them unless they were in a position of importance?
Yeah, but it's Joe, and if he was on the track to becoming city ed, I'm definitely under the impression that he was new, and we're going to get to those issues eventually.
Okay. It doesn't really matter because you can't confirm it either.
Well, look, hey, this is your homework, listeners. If there's people who want to write in or email or whatever, just which we don't have the email address set up as of this recording. Is Joe Robertson new? Support or deny that? Go.
Go.
The winner will get
Now,
a yes
how do
prize.
you guys feel about the Vulture? This is his first appearance.
Vulture's first appearance. We don't get a name or an origin until the 80s.
Yep, Roger Stern.
I just say that because I mentioned this on the Spectacular Waves. I really don't like the Vulture just because he's an annoying old guy who runs around yelling in robs jewelry stores. I just think like he's just like the most. Spider-Man could just like knock him out and like throw him and get in jail. He should not pose that much of a threat, and he's introduced here as like a really dangerous villain. I actually kind of find it funny when he pops out the manhole like yoink and steals the diamond transfers. But I was just wondering like what you guys thought of him just because I don't. He's one of my least favorite Spider-Man villains. And
I never was too enthused about him either way. The only story of his that I really loved was the John Mark DeMatteis story where he apologizes to Aunt May for killing her fiance.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing the Vulture was introduced as old because Vultures have the whole hunched over look thing going on. I'm not a big fan of him as a villain in general, but I will say his second appearance with I think is issue 7 is one of my favorites of these early issues. I think that the battle between him and how it goes through all the publishing rooms and everything else is a really cool battle scene.
You say that you like him as a villain. You know that he became a hero for a little while.
Really?
We will not talk about the travesty that was Get Craven.
Unfortunately, if we last that long, we will.
Let's hope we don't.
Josh is not doing that episode.
Oh, I'll do it. I like to rip apart books.
And this is also the first appearance of Now magazine, which has gone by the wayside certainly in favor of the more popular view.
Really didn't last that long.
They brought it back in the 80s for a little while, but then they kind of forgot about it again. And then they brought in Kate Cushing as Joe Robertson's replacement because Joe Robertson got promoted from city editor to editor-in-chief. So Kate Cushing became the city editor, and she was kind of running Now magazine as well, and she was always stricter with Peter.
In the 70s, when Ms. Marvel's series started, she worked for the Daily Bugle doing a women's magazine. I seem to remember the conversation between her and Jameson being along the lines of, I used to do a magazine in addition to the newspaper, and I want to start doing one again with women's issues because that's all the rage now. Can you write one? And
oh, yeah, that's dated.
I think he wanted her to write more like Better Housekeeping, cooking type of magazine, and she went women's lib on him, and Joe Robertson kept Jameson from exploding. But it's been a while since I've read those issues, so I could be totally off. I read them because Mary Jane and Peter were in them for like 2 seconds each for the first 3 issues.
That makes sense.
I'm looking through the art on this as we're talking, and I love like the crowd scenes, watching the Vulture, the faces. I love Ditko's faces, just the people that he draws.
Speaking about art, I think this is that because this is at least a year after Amazing Fantasy 15 came out, right?
Close to it, if not quite that year.
Yeah, I think Ditko's really like gotten better. I think this issue mainly is like there's some really good examples of art. Like on page 11, the top right panel where Spider-Man's kind of like posing, trying to use his spider sense. I thought that's a really cool panel. I like the shot where he's like holding on the Vulture's leg, and we'll get into like the Tinkerer story. But there's some really really cool shots of Spider-Man and Peter Parker. And I think the art's like really getting rapidly better as it went on since Amazing Fantasy 15.
He's really definitely getting a handle for the physiology of Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly.
And how he's so agile that he will carry himself differently.
Yeah, like the body language.
Right. And just when you zoom in on the Vulture's face, the way he draws the Vulture's face is just awesome. It's just, such a crotchety old man. But yeah, I really like the art in here. You're right.
And he's drawing Peter more athletic too. Peter's never huge, but he's drawing him like athletic, but still under his like classroom clothes.
Right.
You can see the realism in it.
I guess all the web swinging it gives. He even talks about in future issues that it's actually the web swinging that gives him exercise and stuff. So by this point, he's been doing it a lot. So you can guess that he's been bulking up.
The first Spider-Man I bought, that Powerless trilogy, an Amazing 341, 2, and 3, I think, he's, frisbeeing with Flash in the park, and he's all, ripped. And he's like, I guess all that time as Spider-Man really helped just, build my normal agility. We do have the first sale of photos to J. Jonah, and he's not the cheapskate that he becomes later.
No, he's the idiot he becomes later because he's like, yeah, how do you get these? So, you know our deal. You don't ask, and you'll get the pictures. Okay. Like that's the sleaziest thing you could ever do to make a living for yourself, and you
Well,
just
it's even sleazier because he later hires somebody to tell Peter to find out how he takes the pictures, and then because he's so determined to find out, but then he gets distracted, like, oh well, onto the scorpion thing, forget about Peter.
So putting
Yeah.
Jameson more in the box so we know of him later, what if he gives full market value for these photos the first time just to rope in Peter and then like starts lowering the price as they go along? Like that's part of his plan with every one of his freelance photogs. Is like he
That's
pays them
probably
full
what he
price
did.
for the first go and then the next one's going to cost you.
Well, that's got to be what he did because if he's able to pay for a full year of rent with
and
one
kitchen
set of
appliances.
photos, he wouldn't be always as broke as he is.
And that's how they bought the house. Like he paid the rent for a year and she took her jewelry money and bought the house.
And, well, like,
Yeah.
they obviously spend it all the time. They don't ever save.
And then
So yeah.
And then that landlord came back and he's like, "Hey, I didn't know that your husband had died when I was, I'm sorry. Here's the deed to the house."
But the cops are outside her house like the entire. Never mind.
So don't you just love at the end where it has a little circle with the Spidey head and the Peter head and they're oh so cute together?
That's like the only
You
happy
don't
ending
see
in all
Peter
of
that
it.
happy a lot.
Yeah, they actually like had to make him use muscles he's
Smile.
never used before.
Yeah, I'm sure Ditko was like biting his teeth when he drew that.
And Flash Thompson returns this issue.
Yes, to razz on Peter.
As he always, a lot of these things are, the kids want to see something just because, and they invite Peter. He says no. He says, what a loser, and that's all you see of them. Like the first 10
That's the
issues. Or
thing.
something.
Like they make an effort in these early issues to include Peter, but he always turns them down. So I don't blame them for thinking that Peter's stuck up.
Yeah, it probably ticks Flash off because by issue 4, Flash wants to fight Peter. Peter starts to shove back, and Flash is like, "Oh yeah, this is what I've been waiting for." And like what they don't say, but it fits in with the later retcon is like, "You stuck up little snob son of a gun, This is what I've been waiting for to show you what take
I'm
down
gonna kill
fight
you.
Well, yeah. Well, he and Peter, we later find out that he's known him since he was a child. But then it's funny because that was like a retcon later that they were childhood quote unquote friends because in Gary Conway's run, I forget what it is, but he says that he's known Flash for.
I always thought it was Jerry Conway, but I guess it doesn't really matter.
Probably. Either way, whoever Conway is, he says something. I forget the year that he gives, but he says that he's only known Flash for like X amount of years. And if it might have been like 4 or 5 years. So the guy's like, wait a second. So is Peter? And the reviewer was like, wait, so is Peter 9 years old in this story?
Right.
Now
All
on to
right.
the terrible Tinkerer.
And this really does run more like a classic, like amazing fantasy kind of story, and it may be why I actually don't like it as much. The uncanny
Can't imagine
threat
why.
of the terrible Tinkerer with an exclamation point because it's better that way. Peter Parker volunteers to work for a famous electronics expert, Professor Cobwell, over the weekend. Cobwell asks Peter to pick up his radio at the Tinkerer repair shop, which only charges a dime for repairs, which even in 1963 is chump change to work on electronics.
Yeah, now magazine costs 25 cents.
At Cobwell's lab, Peter notices that the radio triggers his spider sense. He opens the back and finds tubes unlike anything he has seen. Returning to the shop as Spider-Man, he discovers a gang of green, scaly aliens spying on military and scientific leaders through spy devices in their radios, which is just awesome. Spider-Man breaks up the racket and finds the Tinkerer's human mask in his hands, implying he was an alien too.
I'll say
Really kind of a simple story. I probably should have gone into more detail in the recap, but we do have first appearances of Professor Cobwell, who never shows up again. The Tinkerer is later revealed to be human, along with all the other aliens, and there's a retcon establishing that Quentin Beck is one of the group. He later becomes Mysterio, so that's a retcon first appearance of Mysterio here. And one of the other aliens is named Charlie. He shows up later, too.
Which is funny. It is done. We can never again return to Earth. They will be on guard from this day on. So when they retconned that, they did that flashback, and then they show you what the next panel would have been, where the other alien says, "Hey, you can drop the act. We're alone now."
Yeah, it's like, what are you still talking like an alien for? Spider-Man.
And even if they were aliens, it's like we can never again return to Earth. Like really? Like you got these ray guns and everything, but because Spider-Man shot some webs at you, it's like, run away, never again return to Earth.
And then they got news of the
This
Hulk
story-
out in the Southwest.
It's like, really?
Like the best part I love about the story is the art. I think the art is like even better. Like that shot on page 3 of Pete, like the half Spider-Man face, half Peter face. Like
Yeah.
that's an awesome image.
And the
I was
Tinker,
about to say I was gonna make a note of that because that's the first time that they do that, and that's a very classic thing.
and fans, there were complaints from fans that they thought it was cheesy, but I really like it.
Every once in a while, there'll be someone that's new to Spider-Man or new to the comics that'll like see that and be like, "Why does Peter have half a mask on right now?" And I
Right.
have to explain that he doesn't actually have half a mask on.
That actually
Like,
did confuse me when I was
it's
younger. I was like, what is up with that? But I didn't know it was like kind of like a metatextual thing.
I never
sometimes
had
that's how
that
they did
confusion.
Spider Sense.
When I read it as a kid, I never had that confusion. It was just like, oh, they're like showing that he's actually Spider-Man here.
I mean, like the Tinker is like his it's a very very good artwork because like his face is so distinctive, but he had like a phallic looking nose and a phallic looking chin. I just kind of wanted him to be really punched in the face.
Oh, I love the Tinkerer's face here. Yeah, it's all totally pointy and twisted, but I love the face.
It's very good art, but it's just like the way he goes on about it. I really want him to just like be kind of socked in the gut and like fall over and just be arrested. I don't know. I mean, it's not on Spider-Man Unlimited #9 or anything, but it's a story I could have done without.
It's the Tinkerer was the Tinkerer was actually wearing a mask of his real face,
Over his face.
which is why this
As you do.
retcon.
It's like a Doc
yeah.
Brown Back to the Future 2 moment.
Yeah.
When he's
And it's
pulled.
like smiling. The face is smiling at it. Was actually kind of creepy on the last page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This alien, like the alien thing, was kind of silly.
Kind of silly.
But retconning it was like even harder because it's like, okay, so the alien that said we must never again return to Earth, he was method acting, just
Right.
like Aunt May, just like the Aunt May actress who died, and yeah, we talked about that in Clone Saga Chronicles because the Aunt May that died was an actress, but like she had thought balloons while she was in her coma, so it was like she was method acting, which
Yeah,
is even weirder because what actress signs up for a role where you're going to die?
Right.
It is very much in line with the old Marvel tales, like especially the Fantastic Four. They fought like I assume they fought like interplanetary things all the time.
Oh, yeah.
But to do it with Spider-Man, which was such a low key, believable main character, you can tell like how these green alien men run around, which just kind of disrupt the flow of the story.
The Green Aliens are kind of straight out of the 50s, too. I don't really care much. I mean,
Between the mask and the dialogue, it's like, and why were they disguised as aliens? And it was retconning this was such a mess.
it works.
I almost would have rather had them leave it alone because I mean they never retconned the Skrulls,
Right.
which was like a silly story like this in Fantastic Four issue #2. Ironically,
But they use the scrolls in like 15 or something like that. So, I mean, the scrolls got established before people.
There's actually also a very huge plot hole in this thing.
What's the huge plot hole here?
Well, not a plot hole, but like something stupid. Like they said they're gonna suck all the air out of the bubble Spider-Man is in. Yet he escapes by shooting his web out of air holes. How are they gonna suck air out of a thing?
Yeah, I don't know if there was like some sort of pump pushing the air out of those holes. I never really got how that was supposed to work either.
they're actors. They were probably just like, okay, we're just gonna put him in this thing and tell him that he's suffocating. Maybe he'll
Maybe he'll suffocate.
Maybe he'll freak out.
It's
Like,
psychosomatic.
It's psycho. Just tell him that he's suffocating. You're running out of air, Spider-Man.
Worst villains ever.
Serious. We will
I really
never
don't like
again
it.
return to Earth.
Going into the empty shop, and then Spider Sense in the dark, and going down the creepy staircase to the stone-lined walls. That's really cool creepiness. Yeah, when you take out the whole retconning that happens later, this story works really well as a sort of amazing adult fantasy kind of story. I actually, as I'm thinking about it now, I'm liking it better than because I've read this story so many times as a kid, and it was one of my least favorites of the first volume of my trilogy.
Which is why I don't think retconning it was necessary. The silly aliens are silly, but the silly people who pretended to be silly aliens for no reason, and the guy that wore a mask of his own face, and
they retconned it separately. Like the Tinkerer was retconned at one point because they wanted to use the Tinkerer again, I guess, and then the aliens were retconned for a Mysterio story even later.
Well, I understand why it's stupid because this issue shows how like non-lethal and unthreatening they are. He like socked them in the face and they just walk away. Like on one page, they throw a car engine, an inverter mechanism at him, and trap it in a bubble with air holes and try to suck the air out. Like they're so non-threatening that I understand like not wasting the point of retconning a useless story, but I don't think it hurts that they did it.
We do get a web shooter diagram.
yeah, I like
Which
that.
I always like. I always like how they explain how it works.
We don't have the whole tap twice to fire thing established yet. I think that's established quite a bit later, actually.
Yeah, so it explains how he punches without spraying people in the face.
Right. Now, here there's a safety catch. Like, for me, that was always the explanation. There's a safety catch on. And so whenever he's punching and stuff, he's not shooting his webs. And also, I think the way it's lined up in your palm, like when you make a fist, your finger hits pretty high up on the palm. And then in this page, it looks like he's actually reaching down to the bottom of his palm to push the button. So it, to me, this totally makes sense.
Like, sometimes they say, like, you know, he needs to have his certain set of strength to use it, and other people wouldn't be able to use it. Other times it's like how he presses it, because a lot of times in these early issues they say with the slightest pressure he can use the web shooters, and it's like there's a lot of back and forth with it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that different writers played with. So if these are aliens, I mean, if these are guys in masks, what is the ship that's taking off there?
Who the hell knows?
It's an airplane that's just really fancy. I actually think that they did establish what it was later.
Okay.
Yeah, God in heaven.
And I just read that story, in the past couple of weeks. So you think I'd know, but no, I don't remember why there's a.
I'm so like apathetic towards this story because it's so silly. But I appreciate if you like it. It doesn't bother me.
So yeah, Tinkerer and Professor Cobwell, who is useless and kind of a absent-minded professor here. I kind of like the idea that Peter was chosen to work for the big-name professor, even though the big-name professor never shows up again.
It was a weekend job.
It was a weekend job.
He gets made fun of for that. Like, oh, you're going to help the professor. Aren't you a loser? Sometimes you kind of want them to say, shut up.
I get you, Flash. Isn't it ironic, though? You're Spider-Man's biggest fan, but you hate Peter Parker? It's so ironic that we're going to mention it a bunch of times in case you don't know how ironic it is.
It's irony on irony.
Okay.
So this issue has a pretty cool ad for all of Marvel's heroes being published at the time. It advises kids to watch for the greatest symbols in comics. Which means the Marvel Comics group masthead that is in the top left of the corner of the cover. In this case, featuring the Fantastic Four. There is art for Thor appearing in Journey into Mystery, the Amazing Spider-Man, of course, Iron Man appearing in Tales of Suspense with his Mark I armor painted gold. There's Ant-Man appearing in Tales to Astonish, and Human Torch appearing in Strange Tales and Fantastic Four. It says, many other stars now on sale, plus new surprises on our drawing board from the House of Ideas. And by many other stars, they actually mean all the non-superhero characters, because they have quite a few at the time. But Hulk's getting canceled this month. It's just been canceled. And Sergeant Fury is not out yet, so yeah, it's kind of a cool ad, though. It's actually, I like these early ads because they're not just copies of covers. They're actual art to make it a cool-looking ad. Okay, so wrapping up the episode, let's see, what are some favorite moments from these last two issues? Let's do Donovan first.
This one makes no sense. Aunt May, this money means you're not going to have to worry about anything again. I paid the rent for a full year, and tomorrow I'm buying you the newest kitchen appliances you ever drooled over. That just insinuates that either Jameson's richer than we thought, or Peter's just a spoiled child.
Yeah, Jameson must have given him a lot of cash.
Even for the 60s.
Yeah, either that or, like, rent was dirt cheap.
What have you got, Josh?
The line that I was harping over when we were talking about the retcon, it is done. We can never again return to Earth. They will be on guard from this day on.
Yes.
Just because of how complicated that line made things later.
Right, and in context of the retcon, it's a totally useless line now. Okay, so mine from issue 1 was in the Jameson story, whenever he's on the capsule and he's like, there, I reached it, but now the capsule is losing altitude dangerously. Can I attach the missing unit in time? And you turn the page and he's attaching the missing unit. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a very nice thing.
And the other one was from the splash page of the Tinkerer story. Spider-Man says, he looks so harmless, and yet the Tinkerer is one of the greatest menaces I've ever faced. And he's so not.
Well, he's fought what? Crusher Hogan?
and a capsule.
the burglar, a capsule.
And the vulture.
A communist.
Right,
a masked communist.
You can reach us by leaving comments on the podcast's main site, which is amazingspiderman.libsyn.com. We don't have email set up yet, but we will soon.
Keep on reading Spider-Man.
Yay, Spider-Man. Thank you for listening to Amazing Spider-Man Classics. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man. In the chill of night, at the scene of a crime, like a streak of light, he arrives just in time. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Wealth and fame, he's ignored. Action is his reward to him. Life is a great big hang-up. Wherever there's a hang-up, you'll find a Spider-Man.
Yay, Spider-Man. Thank you for listening to Amazing Spider-Man Classics. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to another episode of...
Awesome.
Oh my god.
Awesome.
I'm sorry, just like the whole context of that.
That was awesome, John. I've never heard somebody do that before.
That's